10,000 years ago, our ancestors used this. Here we go. A rock. Rocks. They hunted, they gathered, and they lived their lives and did their thing. But of course, that did eventually change. Now we have this. Ah, there you get you there. You won't get out of your shot this easy. Hi, I'm Ed of History, and this is a rock. You can also call it, one can also call it a stone. There are many like it, but this one looks like the sort of thing that our ancestors used to eke out an existence as hunter-gatherers just some 10,000 years ago. Oh, our ancestors were doing such? But now, of course, things are very different. We have a world of microwaves, cities, computers, societies, all sorts of things. Including this. So let us begin the story of our move through history and how we got where we are today. In short, from rocks to robots. Yes, the story of leaders and innovators and those individuals who moved our world forward. Actually, it's more about the development of technology and property rights. Exactly. Hey. As humankind progresses to the proven correct mode of human organization, the capitalist nation state. Well, actually, I was thinking of how those things remove the workers from the means of production, leaving them dependent on exploitative capitalist elites that extract the value of labour power for their own profit. While I agree on the point about the exploited underclass, the actual motive is domination, namely securing power from the ordinary people in the name of exploitative social constructs to assure the domination of bourgeois morality. It's not bourgeois morality, it's merely the culmination of the development of philosophical, moral and ideological thought which has shown over time to be built around the liberal traditions. Actually, you're both wrong. Different groups developed over time, usually with geographical explanations for their differences, before gradually developing into a global community as barriers are broken down. Okay, how did you ducks get here? Amazon delivery? I mean, apart from that, we came to tell the story. But that's what I was doing. But we provide the historiography. After all, you can't tell the story of history without all your ducks in a row. It's the elephant in the room. Who are you? I thought I'd just done my introduction. Anyway, I am the elephant in the room, and I'm here to show you the past. Past. Step over here and enter my time machine. Looks more like a trestle table and a green screen. Film magic will sort that out. Yep. Yep. Now let us away! Well, here is our first stop, the Stone Age. Ahem, what about the prehistoric era? Well, technically prehistoric is any time before written records, because while it's probably true that most actions in most eras went unrecorded, there was a time before there were written records. But that would vary extensively depending on when writing was developed. After all, we don't have written records from Britain until Julius Caesar invades, at which point we have sources from Egypt dating back millennia. Well, technically we have records from Britain going back that far, but we can't always read them. Similar to the carvings left by the boat people of Scandinavia, but pictograms are never as clear as writing. That's why we are using this point. While I am biased from my empiricist academic roots, I'm aware that we can argue over and attempt to iron out the perfect definition of any given term to make an understanding which exists in pure logic and fit into a world that doesn't always have logic as its basis. But ultimately, such pursuit has little practical purpose. Therefore, I went with a rough definition that broadly fits, and most people will know what we're talking about. So, as it will be a while before or any written sources arrive, and this period is more for archaeologists, how about we all introduce ourselves? Thank you. Then, I think I'll begin. I'll keep it brief. This isn't a musical. For you see, back in the past, in the time and the place and the hour, the decisions were made by the people, by a person of power. Certain key peoples were making decisions, and that led history down the path it has arisen. As the great persons of history set the course, not a mystery. The great persons set the course of history, and that's why the past not a mystery. Study their lives, study their background. You'll find a way to what they found. That's all well and good. But that was just chance. They came into position from their circumstance. And history is not just reduction. When you look around at the means of production, there's a worker and the owning boss. They'll set the course and get what they want. At the start, it was just the people and themselves. Elves creating what they wanted, not just to fill shelves. Then the slave societies, like Greece and Rome, set slave and slave owner as their home. But beyond the base, there's a superstructure. Everyone is held to their position by a superstructure created to justify class division. You have a society built in such a muddle, and thus the history of the class struggle. After the slaves came the feudal realm, the lord and the peasant, the peasants at the bottom and the lord at the helm. Then the capitalist phase would come after that, with the big CEO pushing proletariat. Eventually it will come to the rise when the contradiction is raised up high and the workers seize the means for themselves, and they're not just left just filling the shelves. This is the Marxist history, the struggle of the workers looking to become free. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm a duck of impeccable taste. I've seen the nations rise and tame the wilds and wastes. And then the rule of law protects what they fought to stop life becoming brutish and short. With value found in supply and demand, so that everybody, and a culture so everybody knows where they stand. I'm the triumphal history. With the rise of the nation state you will see. With the history comes a story of hate and love, but comes from below and not from above. The subaltern history ain't a farce. We understand the movements of gender, race and class. When you understand what was going below, then you will see, then you will know where the history comes from and where it will go, 'cause we know the movements of the human race from below. History comes, do not fear. You understand it from the world of ideas, 'cause movements rise and movements fall in the zeitgeist of all of it all. You understand what is going on when you've got the ideas of what is right and wrong. Because history is made through the ideas, so you do not have to fears. Don't think there's explanation, no song and dance, with old world explained by the circumstance. There's no explanation for everything's go. The postmodern way is gonna show that history happens based on how it was in its world in that here and now. Factors come together, but there's no thread uniting them all, as it is said. Although sometime we're all going to have to address the elephant in the room. So here we are, with the first farmers developing settlements. This time period, at least in Eurasia, follows a pattern from Copper Age to Bronze Age to Iron Age. With the first settlements and the first farmers, we see the first rulers, at least that records exist for. Sargon, Hatshepsut, Hammurabi, to name but a few. Their drive and ambition led them to unite the tribes of their regions and grew the first cities. If I may, these regions were granted strong geographical advantages, hence why out of the traditionally defined cradles of civilization, they are defined by rivers. The Nile Valley spawned Egypt. Mesopotamia, meaning the land between the rivers, was between the Tigris and Euphrates, and that spawned Babylon. The Indus Valley civilizations gave their name from the valley of the Indus River, which spawned them along with the Ganges, and the Sinosphere grew out of the Yangtze and Yellow River. And before you ask, Greek civilization based around Minoa at this time was an offshoot of the Fertile Crescent. Also, might I point out that there were plentiful civilizations in other regions, Great Zimbabwe for example. I have wondered whether there is a problem with this geographic focus. It is seeming a little Eurocentric. We were talking about the development of cities. While there may be some exceptions, it is a well-established fact that historically cities grew in regions with easy access to navigable waterways to facilitate trade and travel. That still doesn't explain why the great cities of the Rhine date from later classical and medieval times. Not to mention that by the same token, Bronze Age civilizations should have sprung up in the Mediterranean when the cities in that region were relatively small until the classical era. And in case you're wondering, the existence of the Sea People show that the Mediterranean was accessible with their technology.
although the sea people show us an example of the first dichotomy between those who settled land and those who roamed freely, that some like to call nomads. We don't even know who the sea people were. Accounts from this time period are extremely limited. What we do see is the emergence of a class system based on a warrior class that became a landed elite as they found profit in becoming protectors of the working population. Although I think we are missing the point, namely the foundation of codes of laws ending the cratocratic barbarism of previous times where might made right. You are confusing codes largely designed for trade with social order. These emerged from the people through common custom and folklore which became cultures. Law codes were far more extensive, covering marriage, crime and punishment, and so on. Aren't you both backdating the nation state? While the elements were there, the rise of national identity would be later. Hence how many empires broke apart on their ruler's death. Things definitely began to change as writing developed. Towards the end of the Iron Age, writing starts to develop, along with trade and cities develop and expand their influence in what is known as the Classical Era, with great entities rising. The Han Dynasty creating a unified China in 221 BC and ending the Warring States period, and the rise of a strategy guide that is widely studied today, namely Sun Tzu's The Art of War. The rise of Persia, rulers such as Ashoka in India, and the Mediterranean civilizations in Greece and Rome, as well as people like the Celts. However, all things come to an end. The fall of Rome. Around the 5th century AD, the Roman Empire fell. I will take it from here. The Roman Empire had been stretched too thin and became slow, bureaucratic and unresponsive. Over the centuries, cracks began to show as more chaos crept in. Then they broke. And whether no one wanted to do anything about it, or whether there was nothing that could be done, there was nothing that could be done at that point. Quite importantly, after a while the emperors became less effective. It's quite telling how Roman sources talk to 5 good emperors, for example. Many, like Commodus and Caligula, became given to vice and pleasure. Others became embroiled in faction fighting and the miasma of internal politics of Rome, and thus left the provinces to wither and the people to get poorer. Hence we see the culture of Rome diluting. With so many people being Romanized, it became harder to understand Roman values, and thus people became lost and confused, and Romans began living for the moment, to moment thrills, rather than constructing for the future. However, can we blame them, given the direction their emperors were taking? A somewhat medieval view. No, it isn't. I know you like to undermine high politics, but there is a fact that leadership is an important factor in decision making. People look to their leaders to provide guidance, hence why they exist in the first place. Constantine, for example, used Christianity to attempt to reunify the Roman people, seeing how much Christianity appealed to the Roman people as a renewal. Well, maybe, but as we see, Rome shut out ideas and became less accommodating. Converting ended centuries of diversity and was merely an attempt at a new paradigm, replacing the sacred feminine with a strict bourgeois morality. But what new paradigm? For a start, the very people who sacked Rome were Christians, so I'm not sure exactly how unaccommodating Rome was being on that front. When it comes to bourgeois morality, we actually have evidence that women took a leading role in converting Rome to Christianity. Also, we can see the old order still in effect. The inefficient system of slave-based economics showed its end point. There was no more land to conquer or people to capitalise, and thus the system, where one or few cities held all the wealth, it simply collapsed into feudalism because it had nothing left to consume. Considering how Rome never completely conquered Europe and had sat at its frontiers for centuries prior to the last major with the last major conquest being Dacia in 106 AD, it seems unlikely that there was nothing left to conquer. However, we do know that Earth entered a cold period around 300 AD, which forced northerly and easterly tribes to head south and west towards more fertile lands near the sea. This pushed existing tribes towards the Roman frontier as they desperately sought new life from the poverty-stricken lands they came from, and the Roman response was to form a wall against the migrations, thinking that walling off these global issues would make them go away. Just a moment. Are you ducks still talking about Rome? Welcome to the medieval period, a time predominated by the feudal system. And the earliest time from which you had action figures. Let's not be too serious about this, guys. Anyway. At this point, the Middle Ages or medieval period in Europe is said to start with the fall of the Roman Empire. Seems a little early, as the Roman Empire in Constantinople carried on until 1453. I don't like that, you know. I mean, I understand the whole argument that if we go by how they saw themselves, but if we follow that line of how they saw themselves, then, well, the Sultanate of Rum, or Rum, I've heard it pronounced both ways. I'm sure any native speakers of the Turkic language it comes from, feel free to let me know in the comments. Hints. But either way, however it's pronounced, Rome is the English translation of that word of Rum in their native language. So, would they count as Roman? As for Europe, we can see how Charlemagne was awarded the title of Emperor in 800 AD, a direct sign of succession to the Roman Empire. That would put the end of the empire in 1806, when the Holy Roman Empire was formally dissolved by Napoleon. Also, it should be noted the Ottoman Empire also claimed the imperial title after 1453, thus theoretically ending the empire in 1924. We also had the claim by the Russian Tsars to being the Third Rome, which was used as a casus belli in the 19th century, since the Russian Empire argued that imperial title gave them the sovereignty over all Christians in the Ottoman Empire, a title France tried to seize from them under Napoleon III, adding credence to the fact that this is how people saw themselves. However, this would give an end date for the Roman Empire in 1922, when the Russian Empire was dissolved, although Napoleon's imperial claim could end the empire in 1871, so if we consistently follow how they saw themselves as a line of definition, we would have end dates well past 1453, these being 1806, 1871, 1873, 1922, 1924, and of course the final end date of never, this being based on a technicality that as the Russian Tsars held the Third Rome title and passed it to their titles, there was one title, the Grand Duchy of Finland, which was never really dissolved since the Soviets never conquered Finland and thus never had the authority to remove its title, and thus the Republic of Finland being sort of successor to the Grand Duchy of Finland and could be the Roman Empire. In fact, there are some people who do argue this. Finland as the end of Rome. Really? Are we going to claim that the capital of the Roman Empire is Helsinki? Look, the Western Roman Empire ended when Romulus Augustus abdicated without an heir, letting the title of emperor go with its remnant, the King of the Romans, passing to the Pope. Okay, this is a bit of a long one. Bit long-winded, all that. I mean, and what even was the Middle Ages? Allow me. In this era, Europe formed their lands of home. China and India did, while we talked of Rome. While it was the past of ancient civilization, out of this dark age emerged modern nations. A Britain would here first come to eye, as Geoffrey of Monmouth would testify. The Treaty of Verdun would tell French from German, and the Arabic peoples were unified. 'Tis be the medieval time, 1,000 years of growth and recline. 'Tis be the medieval time, from this modern Eurasia came into line. British culture is an anomaly. Being islands, it has natural boundaries. Geoffrey of Monmouth had much fictionalized, and Middle Franconia must have slipped your mind. Yes, Monmouth's work is testimony to the beginning of notional identity. Beyond Britain and Japan, where is it you can find a nation not formed by an authority? Just take it from the Cathar Crusade, the French from peasants it made. A kingdom crushed local identity, they were really at war with the locality. 'Tis be the medieval time, 1,000 years growth and recline. 'Tis be the medieval time. From this modern Eurasia came into line. Later a nation France would build, atop plots of lords and what kings willed. Expanding France, their kings did hope to be an equal player to emperor and pope. The lion heart led England's crusade. Saladin the Arab world remade. Eleanor of Aquitaine invented romance. Genghis Khan's conquest linked China and France. 'Tis be the medieval time, 1,000 years of growth and recline. 'Tis be the medieval time, from which modern Eurasia came into line. In days of old, when knights were bold, not italic or underlined, when kings and popes held their nation's hopes, their fates and their destinies intertwined. Take it from here, 'tis what I mean. In divine right held all in a chain of being. Catholic Confucian or Caliphate, your place in God's order was your fate. 'Tis be the medieval time, 1,000 years of growth and recline. 'Tis be the medieval time, from this modern Eurasia came into line. All on the back of a worker's fate, to live 1,000 years in a feudal state. The means of production were tied to the land, building someone else's castle by brain and hand. While true the church tended to worker neglect, and the peasant had their lot and perhaps self-respect. While the oppression came with some sympathy, a peasant mercy of the aristocracy. 'Tis be the medieval time, 1,000 years of growth and recline. 'Tis be the medieval time, from this modern Eurasia came into line. The truth is, this was no time of nations. That's illusion from communities in isolation. The Mongol hordes would make their endeavour. Out from the steppes they changed the world forever. The Mongols rode to settle and raid. Afterwards Europe and China would always trade, birthing global trade from this mechanical labour. So perhaps capitalism owes the Mongols a favour. whoa, what's that whirly thing? Are we being demonetised? All we did was make a reasonable point based on evidence. I mean, I was just pointing out how communications and meant that communities ceased to be isolated, which allowed for technological innovation. And that's about a century late. Anyway. And why are all these images? And why are all the background images distorted? Oh, that's just because you have to view the past through the lens of perspective. Sounds like a nice. Well, that sounds like a nice colour for the fact that Ed can't use a green screen. Yo. My dramatic entrance. You fools. It is I. The sort of intersectional kind of tanky, woke skull, that sort of thing. From the timeline where I would embrace that fully. I kind of put an end to your sort of patriarchal triumph, well, oppressive narrative. Keep your politics out of our history. Sorry. Ugh. Trying to be all dramatic. So, keep your politics out of our history. Yes. Not so fast. I am from the timeline where Ed became pretty based. You know, universal morality, all that stuff, nice Kantian ethics and stuff like that. Or things like that. And I'm here to put a stop to your SJW ramblings. Keep your politics out of our history. I found you two, and I will stop you, for I am the Ed that was more libertarian, in that sort of Atlas Shrugged-y kind of way. I'm from that timeline where Ed embraced the idea of end of all ideology in the sort of some weird cross between neoliberal and we'll just keep your politics out of our history. Oh no. Wait a minute. What do we do? Wait a minute. Aren't you guys more alternate history? history. What do you mean? Well, we've kind of jumped into someone else's time. You've kind of jumped into someone else's timeline, so surely this is your alternate history, not your history. Got a good point there. Yeah. Sock puppets. Ugh. Anyway, point is, you can't keep politics out of history and stop falling over on the job. And more to the point, you can't keep politics out of history. History. Let me show. I'm going to show you why in just a moment, while I build up to sort of power kind of a law when Ed can get it, or when Ed can get it all set up with the ukulele and the PowerPoint. Yes. So you know what? Let's face it, there's nothing worse than fake professionalism. Idiots. Ugh. You can't depoliticize history. I'll show you. History's political, no doubt. Is what's left in, is what's left out. Look away, look away, look away. What happened? There is no way to fit it all. So what is said is a judgment call. Look away, look away, look away. What happened? Cause there's no harm in thinking critically. Seeing how things fit together does increase your understanding. When you understand, you make better decisions. When you understand, you make better decisions. The trouble come when thunders mutter. If I shot down the fairies, flutter. Look away, look away, look away to what happened. No discussions made in fierce defiance to varying views and no trust alliance. Look away, look away, look away to what happened. Cause there's no harm in thinking critically. Seeing how things fit together does increase your understanding. When you understand, you make better decisions. When you understand, you make better decisions. To make your arguments much more. Look away, look away, look away to what happened. Anyway, and if you want to drive away sorrow, don't try and fit the truth to your morals. Look away, look away, look away to what happened. Cause there's no harm in thinking critically. Seeing how things fit together does increase your understanding. When you understand, you make better decisions. When you understand, you make better decisions. Anyway, you three aren't even in this bit. You come in later. You've got a whole song. Song 20th in the 20th century part 2, Stalin's Dead, the Final Nightmare. So we'll see you there. Go on. Well everyone, that leaves us in the age of pike and shot. Yes. Oh. Now,
we don't really need to be back in Europe till 1648, so why don't we have a bit of time with the New World? Oh, let's get on this nice little ship. Look.
You know, never mind. Don't worry about the low budget.
We'll be fine. Don't worry about the low budget production, we'll be fine. On the boat.
Bit packed, bit pokey on this boat with all 6 ducks, but we'll manage it. Yeah, oh yeah. Hey. How's everyone doing? Yes. Okay, well. Okay. Oh no. Another boat's following us. You're not getting away that easily.
It's
It's nothing personal, it's just European and history in this period's rather complicated, you know. The Reformation then becomes a big thing and just takes over pretty much the entire discussion. And you know what the internet's like when you start bringing religion into the mix. Plus, let's be honest, the writer, having studied the Tudor, having dealt with the Tudors in year 2, year 5, year 8, and for A level, was quite frankly bored of it. Here we are in Cartagena. Silver, which was mined in the mountains of the Viceroyalty of Peru, was transported on llama trains to this port and others, and shipped back to Seville in Spain. Where vast fortunes were made for a select few. Exactly. All built on exploitation. The wealth of colonial empires in Spain, Portugal, France, England, Britain after 1707, and the Netherlands, not to mention others in Central and South America in this time period. All of them built on the exploitation of Native American and First Nation peoples, and after too many of them had died, they set up the triangle trade, which shipped millions of African people to the Americas by force and brutally exploited them. I agree, slavery is indefensible. And that is what capitalism was built upon. That's not something I can agree with, for you see, capitalism had been going for about a century when the New World was discovered, and capitalism did provide the wealth needed to create the colonies and the slave trade in the first place, because people needed to invest in the expeditions. So where did the money come from? Landlords in Europe, you see. Sort of, especially the minor landlords. Minor gentry in the first nouveau riche, as it were. For you see, after the Black Death, of which bubonic plague, pneumonic and septicemic plague were variants, there were fewer peasants, and thus fewer people to work the land, which led to reinvestment and reorganisation to make land more efficient, such as enclosures, as well as a beginning of workers moving to towns on a much larger scale than before, where they traded for commodities in order to survive, creating a consumer base, the profits from which were reinvested in colonial endeavours and exploitation. Also, the scientific revolution led to an increase in shift from labour-based production to capital-based production, though eventually the Spanish Empire declined as it fell behind in innovation due to being a repressive state. Well, yes, but I mean, I wasn't talking about religion. Portugal and Austria both prospered during this time period, with Portugal only declining in the 19th century, and Austria was a major power right up until the end of World War I. Actually, I was thinking that inflation was a bigger issue for Spain. There was no serious incentive to economically innovate, as the Andes Mountains were essentially seen as free money. However, the more people own silver, the less value it commands in the market. By the way, if you were wondering, gold was also involved, but since silver was the basis of currency in this time period, it was where the real money was, as gold was seen more as a commodity. Arguably, the Spanish silver glut caused gold to be seen as the basis of currency, since silver had been losing its value, although Spain's troubles were not helped by Charles V, for he was draining the wealth of Spain in expensive continental wars in the Mediterranean and Balkans, fighting the Ottomans, in the Holy Roman Empire, fighting the princes, and in Italy and the Low Countries, fighting the French. Although arguably, this helped. After all, Charles V would need to pay for his armies and navies. Silver was effectively a universal currency, and taking silver out of circulation in the Spanish economy would keep the price of silver up, even if for a short time, and thus perhaps reduced the inflation bubble that Spain faced. Yes. Thus, there are at least two ways of seeing this issue. But anyway, now we can fly on back to Europe to witness the Treaty of Westphalia. Well, here we are, Europe, 1648. Wait a moment, what's Capitalist Ed doing here? Good job you guys showed up. The other two have gotten hold of the Treaty of Westphalia.
I'm telling you, this is the basis of the Western world, the final piece that threw off tyranny and chaos, allowing the Western world to have the secular Enlightenment that built upon Judeo-Christian virtues of self-reliance, property rights and Stoic restraint. Hey. For a start, you are wrong. While the modern world came from Westphalian sovereignty, it was merely the submission of the world to the will of the white male middle-class self-interest.
that plunged the world... Stand up when I told you. That plunged the world into tyranny. You know... God, stop falling down on the job here. Yeah, good point. So... As I was saying, Restart, you're wrong. While the modern world came from Westphalian sovereignty, it was merely the submission of the world to the will of the white male middle-class self-interest that plunged the world into the mire of inequality and oppression. It is the cornerstone of democracy. That you and your Frankfurt School friends are twisting into the mythical systemic oppression fallacy. More like the cornerstone of capitalism that you and your Huntington following fools are coating with your mythical clash of civilizations rubbish. You're taking the era... You guys are taking the era out of the era. What? 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 Huh? Oh. Okay, elephant. Mm-hmm. We got this, ducks. Let's show these guys what the Enlightenment era was truly about. Cardinal Richelieu to Tokugawa, bureaucracy, centralised power, in courts and country power play, over the hills and far away, over the hills and o'er the main, around the world and back again, the crown commanded, we obeyed, over the hills and far away. The peasant's soul would now refuse to wipe his feudal master's shoes, for he obeyed the nation state, over the hills and far away, over the hills and o'er the main, around the world and back again, nations commanded, we obeyed, over the hills and far away. Enlightened scholars spent their lives arranging science, laws and wives as functions true for here today, over the hills and far away, over the hills and o'er the main, around the world and back again, reason commanded, we obeyed, over the hills and far away. Reason for less than 1 in 10, Enlightenment's rich gentlemen, for minds of the poor women and slaves, over the hills and far away, over the hills and o'er the main, around the world and back again, merchants commanded, we obeyed, over the hills and far away. Livestock cities and global fleet, from which the West unrested meet, guns, germs and steel, all won the day, over the hills and far away, over the hills and o'er the main, around the world and back again, the earth commanded, we obeyed, over the hills and far away.
Peasant farmers felt a rise no more, losing their land to be urban poor. Their independence floated away over the hills and far away, over the hills and o'er the main, around the world and back again. Oligarchs commanded, we obeyed, over the hills and far away. From this came industrial revolution, with furnaces blazing like the sun. Great changes heading to come what may, over the hills and far away. And so we arrive at the industrial era. And yeah, I know it looks a bit Christmassy, but hey, they had Christmas at this time, and well, given we're talking about the standard of living debate, I guess the time of year where people tend to spend as much money as they do would be a useful point. That and the fact that we're basically just borrowing Ed's parents' Christmas decorations. Shh, they don't need to know that. Anyway. So, during this time period, the economy moved from agricultural production towards manufactured products, and society became, as you can see around us, increasingly urbanised. For better or worse. We can see how much better off people were. It is a simple fact that on average husbandry labourers, women included, earned £31 a year. Labourers in mining, canals and the like earned £40, and in manufacturing those workers earned £55 a year, and that was near the beginning in 1801 to 3. You can't just go throwing out statistics and claim to have ended the debate there. But you cannot deny the power purchasing parity increase of £55 a year from £31 a year. And with mechanisation, we saw people more able to take control of their own lives to achieve self-governance, and to end the dominance of landed elites, and the submission of the lower orders as new wealth formed from industry and trade, replacing the old money of the landowners. Yes. That self-governance may have been the case for a few, but most people ended up forced into an intrusive regime of long hours, working, with brief respite, which was maintained by sectional divides such as religion and nationality. But in truth, you really are making too much of this. After all, it was seen at this time, wages were determined by how the job was generally seen, combining how dull, dirty or dangerous with the social mores of respectability. If they didn't want the job,
they would go elsewhere. This being especially true in an industrialising society, as borne out by Lord Macaulay, in 1830, who said, "We must confess ourselves unable to find any satisfactory record of any great nation, past or present, in which the working classes have been in a more comfortable situation than England during the last 30 years. However, we see the family being broken down. I thought you liked that sort of thing. You know, all that patriarchy. Not in this context. The family was the cornerstone of community, welfare and socialisation in the pre-industrial world, and had been the wage-earning unit instead of it becoming the man, with the woman being subordinated to homemaker. And on the point about wages, they declined from 1815 to 1835, rose again until 1840, and remained static until 1850. So you see how volatile the situation was for working people. With regards to women, you forget that since they often controlled the family purse, there were opportunities for greater enterprise and services. And as consumers in the working class economy, also there is evidence that the bonds holding the family unit together were weakening in the 18th century. Also, I think you will find that wages are volatile for a number of reasons. In 1815, the Napoleonic Wars ended, thus lowering demand for goods and services, and decreasing the number of army jobs, which of course have spin-off jobs in the civilian economy. Someone's got to make the rifle, the muskets and the uniforms and all that. Also, for much of the time, you discussed wage rates. Just now, 1815 to 1846, the agricultural sector was in a more static situation due to the Corn Laws effectively keeping competition out of the British agricultural sector, an advantage industry did not have. Well, it seems that there is a problem with sweeping generalisations. Now, as I think we have finished gutting Ed's dissertation justification for sources, let's go see the expansion of empires in the late 19th century from 1870 onwards. So here we are, in the age of imperialism. Who are you? It is I, corporate power. I shall swallow you, and I will rule. Your history is mine. People cannot make a difference. They will be utterly powerless against me. And so, I will consume your history in power. To destroy you. I've got this. We're going to go somewhere to show you that you're wrong. What is this cold and muddy trench that you've taken me to?
You just wait and listen. We're here. It's the Christmas Truce of 1914.
Don't you see? British and German soldiers across the front putting aside their differences out of common humanity, shining through the horrors of war. No one told them to do it. But they left a beautiful moment of hope for a better world. It's proving nothing. The war continued another 4 years. They even arranged bombardments in later years. Your little show proves nothing.
Don't worry. Let's take this to Cable Street.
By our powers combined, we stand together against the fascists. It's the Battle of Cable Street. On October 4th, 1936, Oswald Mosley and his black shirts forces prepared to march on the Jewish community in the East End of London. The people of Stepney allied to resist. Stepney had a vibrant community, and Jews and non-Jews alike joined together in chants of "Down with fascism! They shall not pass!" The Great Depression had been blamed on the Jews and fascist propaganda, in spite of how many of the Jews in London's East End when the BUF were headed actually lived in poverty themselves. Indeed, the Irish dock workers, remembering the support the Jewish community we gave them back in 1912, helped during the dock workers' strike, joined the barricades to protect them from the fascists. While the police had attempted to clear the streets to allow the fascists free, the resistance of the people led to the police chief instructing Mosley to march west and out of the area. After the Battle of Cable Street, the support for the fascists in the UK dropped. Mussolini pulled funds from the BUF, and the previous supporting joined. Such as the Daily Mail headline "Hurrah for the Black Shirts" faded. Public Order Act followed, banning political uniforms in mainland Britain, and the public rallied against fascism. As on the ground, decisions of people organised, the cafes turned to aid stations, and the tide turned on the home front. I'll be back. The fight continues. Indeed. The fight against fascism did continue. pack up your troubles in your old kit bag and smile, smile, smile. While you've a Lucifer to light your fag, smile Drakes, that's the style. Oh, what's the use of worrying? It never ever was worthwhile. So pack up your troubles in your old kit bag and smile, smile, smile. It's a long way to Tipperary. It's a long way to go. It's a long way to Tipperary, to the sweetest hen I know. Goodbye Piccadilly, farewell Leicester Square, for it's a long, long way to Tipperary, but my heart lies there. Roosevelt, Stalin and Churchill, for all their faults, managed the geopolitical chess game of waging total war. Attlee keeping the home fires burning with economic management, Charles de Gaulle rallying the French resistance, Marlene Dietrich putting her voice to break down the Nazi lies, Patton, Montgomery, Nimitz, Bradley, Auchinleck developing new strategies, Alan Turing and Tommy Flowers leading code-breaking efforts, Barnes Wallis's designs combined with Guy Gibson's bravery coming together in the Dambuster raids, Colonel David Sterling and Blair Paddy Mayne combining the talents and personalities, founding the SAS. To win a total war, many personalities were needed. Not just that. Remember, the attack began in the factory. Allied nations shifted their productive capacity to wartime production. They were much quicker to put guns before butter than the Axis forces, ironically, because that was an Axis slogan. By the war's end, a Jeep was coming off the production line every 90 seconds, not to mention the thousands upon thousands of tanks, rifles, and other war supplies of the combined efforts of millions of workers. Millions of men and women, and others, women especially, taking on roles that would have been unthinkable before, even more than they had in World War I. Granted, out of the major powers in the war, only the Soviet Union had female fighter pilots and combat troops on the front line, and female combat troops on the front lines of combat. But women replaced men in the US and UK factories, and even took to the skies delivering planes to the front lines, for example. Not only that, but people we nowadays call minority groups. Roughly 1/4 of Battle of Britain Allied pilots came from outside Britain. Code-breaking efforts at Bletchley Park had many thousands supporting them, both there in occupied nations such as France and Poland, and on the front lines such as able seaman Colin Grazier, who gave his life in 1942 to capture the Enigma codebook, his story being missed out of the film U-571. As the peoples of the free world came together in commitment to preventing the spread of brutal regimes of Nazi Germany, militarist Japan and fascist Italy, they made many sacrifices so future generations could remain free, enduring bombing, food shortages, emotional and psychological heartache over losing or even just not knowing the fate of loved ones, along with the sacrifices of those under occupation in Poland, France, the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, Jersey, Guernsey, and the rest of the Channel Islands, the Soviet Union, in more ways than one, China, Norway, Denmark, and many others, with the brutal war crimes and crimes against humanity being carried out by the Nazis and the Allied nations. The Holocaust was one of the most brutal acts ever inflicted in the history of humanity. With the courage and sacrifice of the war years, the final victory in 1945, and the human cost was immense. Even if that freedom wasn't enjoyed by all, with Eastern Europe exchanging one megalomaniac tyrant for another until 1953 at least, even among the Western Allies, Alan Turing was later prosecuted for homosexuality, which, considering what he did for Britain and how rarely charges were brought relative to complaints filed, fills us with lasting regret. Segregation was deeply rooted in the USA, and racism in more subtle forms existed throughout all the Allied nations. Britain may have lacked the coloured bathrooms, as they were called in the US, but that just made the prejudice harder to spot. Many places occupied by Japan were colonies of European powers, and colonialism still persisted. Still, it is also true, but in the hearts and minds of the people, attitudes started to shift, albeit slowly, as different groups got used to interacting during the war, combined with a revulsion of Nazi crimes against humanity. There was a definite shift. Also, it does need to be said that the bravery and courage of the individuals in the war cannot be denied, and while they may have been part of a time whose values we disagree with, they laid the groundwork for a better world to emerge from all this. No, because they were flawed human beings just like the rest of us, but still, sometimes the war brought both the best and the worst out of people. And I guess it's fair to say they were a golden generation after all. Good show. Let's get those. What? All right. I mean, they probably weren't. Okay. The Third Reich probably wasn't socialist. Yes, and yeah, they were to the. And yes, the USSR was to the left of them. But come on, they were still left wing. How could you possibly think they were left-wing? You know, they illegalized trade unions, as did the Soviets, but that's because they were authoritarian. And as I was about to say, unlike the Soviets, they also led one of the biggest mass privatizations in history. In fact, at that point, it was the biggest in the 20th century, give or take. And the Winterhelft? That's a charity. You know, that was a state organisation. That was a charity! Yeah, typical. Use charity to give the state an excuse not to do anything. Anyway, that's not the point. Because you see, none of that is about left and right. Because ultimately, the left and right boil down to this. It's about morality. You know, do you believe you are morally responsible for your actions? The more you accept you are, the more to the right you are. The more you blame circumstances, the more to the left you are. What utter nonsense. Everyone knows the left-right spectrum is about how inclusive you are. The more you believe in more voices being heard in political, social and economic spaces, the more left-wing you are. The more you believe in only a few voices being heard, the more right-wing you are. Hence why the Nazis are the most right-wing people you could imagine. Imagine. Okay. I think you guys are confused. Because, yeah, the Nazis were authoritarian. But the thing is, ultimately, the authoritarian regimes really fall into the category of two ends of what we call a horseshoe. That basically, the two ends of the political spectrum are ultimately the same, and then in the middle you have people who leave stuff to the individual. What rubbish! That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. You can hardly say that an ethno-state is exactly the same as a Marxist-Leninist dictatorship. Well, it's not like the Soviet Union was that inclusive. Just ask the Ukrainians. Or the Crimean Tatars. Or the Yupik. I mean, pretty much anyone who wasn't Russian during Stalin's time. Look, Stalin was a megalomaniac. But things were different after Stalin. Yeah, it was easier. Oh, but still... yes. My power is complete. Yes, I will eat political discourse, make it into a nice, meaningless barrage of meaningless statements. After all, I can't help. After all, my attractive bad guys with the nice uniforms, I mean, how's anyone going to understand how we managed to beat such a impressive opponent? Ow! You're all being very, very silly now. After all, none of this has anything to do with history. You're trying to impose your own morality, and your own sense of right and wrong on a historical situation. And you're just turning history into ammunition for your own campaigns. Oh, be off with you. Oh, and if you want to, and another way of understanding how we won is that basically, ignore that corporate power statement. Eamon, those big fancy weapons and the Wunderwaffen and stuff were most impressive in propaganda reels. And if you want a good tip on how we won the war, tankers win battles and truckers win wars. You know, the Axis paid very little attention to logistics, which is kind of why they messed up in the Soviet Union and why they struggled throughout the war. And so, with the war won, let's head over to the future again, to a place called Jamaica, which would become independent in 1962. And let's go have a look at how they won the peace. In 1962, Jamaica became independent from Britain. During the 1960s, multiple Caribbean countries gained independence. And now, well, a lot of people think of the Caribbean and they might think of something like this photo. But how about we now peel back the photo, as it were, and tell the story of what happened after independence.
Dear, watch where you're going. I'm telling you, Miss Wholesome, you seen fabric good? 15 for 1. I'll give you 15 for 2.
In spite of some matters of political instability in the late 1970s, Jamaica built a strong government with similar trends to the USA and UK in terms of nationalisation in the 70s, here's privatisation in the 80s. Jamaica also worked to be part of the non-aligned movement, retaining strong ties to the British, as well as balancing their relations with the US and Cuba. Not only that, also figures such as Bob Marley, giving Jamaica and Caribbean culture an icon on the world stage. Alongside the growth in tourism, also seen in places such as Gambia after independence, Jamaica grew into a thriving economy with exports of coffee, bauxite and developing manufacturing to make an upper middle income country in the modern day. The Jamaican diaspora was another noticeable feature. While it had been going before independence, notably the Windrush in 1948, with the spread of Jamaican peoples to places such as the USA, Canada and the UK, the nation grew in international cultural recognition. Bands such as UB40 drawing inspiration from the Jamaican culture they found in Birmingham, although the two brothers who founded it were of Irish descent, hence the cultural mixing. Jamaica has also a strong sense of national identity, and while the rest of the world has influenced them, they influence the rest of the world through that cultural exchange. And while somewhat conservative when it comes to LGBTQIA+ matters, it is also true that this is changing with things such as J-Flag and also the anti-sodomy law, which was a hangover from British rule, is no longer enforced and at the time of writing is in the process of being repealed. It should be noted that Jamaica has been leading efforts in preserving its natural environment, as well as the communities which rely on the ocean for their economic sustenance. Jamaica is also a fine example of democracy. In spite of 4 crises periods between 1976 and 2010, the country has never become a dictatorship since independence. Jamaica is also home of Rastafarianism. Jamaica and its diaspora have also been instrumental in building the black identity movement and helping show the role black people played in world history. Well now, I believe it's time. Let's catch a film at the local cinema. Let's go. Only the crumbliest, flakiest. What now? Stand and deliver! Slow motion effect on this bit. highwayman you don't bother to mention. I'd spend my cash on looking flash and grabbing your attention, but it sounds no good, and there is just, for me, a poor selection. There's nothing out there I can find that fits my predilection.
It may just seem all like this, but you don't have to set this fade. We could just go popping down into the Syrinscape. You want fantasy, or you just want space? You can find it all at this place. There is even software for creating, and you can buy set specific things. And they are not a company that give you excuses. They even have a YouTube show for showing different uses. You can try their stuff for free, and their support's autism friendly.
Tools and sets around here, something's bound to do the jobbing. I would not need a Kaiser's pay, I could even give up robbing. Wow. This is so different. I mean, the green screen, it's no longer messing up my costume. It's because there's no picture for this one. Because we are in an uncertain time. A time when not everyone seems to even agree on what's going on, let alone how to understand it. They call it a culture war, battling for the soul of the human species. All mine eyes have seen the blasphemy of the neo-Marxist horde. Their postmodern academics turned our daughters into whores. They turned our sons to eunuchs and let depravity rule all. So morality marches on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. So morality marches on. It's not how it goes. The corporate hierarchies, they never will retreat. So we kick out all our allies from our judgmental seat. Opinions be vitriol my tweet, so diversity marches on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, hallelujah. So diversity marches on. That's not how it goes. For the left and right, impurities backed by burnished rows of steel. When they're facing the free nations, with the deep state they shall deal, and the villain born of deep state crushes freedom with their, crush the nation with their heel. So liberty marches on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory. Yes. All that has happened. So the humans, they were split up into opposing camps, making altars of their vitriol into in the evening views and lamps. And they fight with as keyboard warriors by the dim and flaring lamps. So corporate power marches on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. So corporate power marches on. You were the end of history. You were supposed to destroy the deep state, not join them. Fool! I am the deep state. There is no deep state. It is corporate power. The means of individual profit without individual responsibility, or so Adam Smith would have told you. Not that it matters, for I will rule the world. I will destroy your discourse, and I will destroy your history with it. And people will be depressed and miserable, and living in an endless cycle of consumption and fear. All empathy will be destroyed. Right, as everyone will see everyone else as out to get them. All will be against all, and my rule will be total. Not if we have anything to do with it. Let's show. Yeah. All the people out there, you just look at fair trade. Just how that took off. Now it predominates so many supermarkets, it's become almost the norm through people choosing things, choosing to live and give in a better way. Not to mention people like 4Ocean, or Ecosia, using their abilities to make the world a better place. Exactly. You know, public and private entities and ordinary people responding to the situation in the world with better solutions. Just look at the co-op. The people setting up their own businesses and putting out into the community. You look at Neighbourly, for example. Yes. Not to mention all the people celebrating their heritage, not as a means of hating on other people, but as a way of joining together. You know, as they say on Christian Aid's slogan, we believe in life before death. Yeah. You just look at all sorts of groups that have spread up. On Discord, being a place of welcomingness and acceptance, even if people have different views. Charities like Mermaids supporting marginalised communities, do better, and they do. Yeah. You know that internet? That means we're connecting the world, also bringing people together as well. Just like President Sunday does on his channel, and all everyone at Transatlantic, building connections, allowing people who perhaps don't fit into narrow social margins to come together and build a better place for everyone. Yeah, even just people doing the things that make them happy and make other people happy as well. Indie Beige just putting out fun videos to help everyone feel better. Better about, well, pretty much anything he can think up. The Metatron following the facts wherever it takes him, no matter what other people say. Lindsay Ellis's honest film analysis, and yes, this is a ducking send-off. Even part of the reason that this channel you're watching it on actually exists. And it's not just famous people, but people out there around the world, down the high street, in your workplace, in your community, helping other people and making the world just that little bit nicer. It all adds up, you know. Exactly. By hand and by brain, we make the world a better place. Each individual coming together, making things better. You know, even all the people who've been helping make this production happen. Its friends and family. Celtica Pipes Rock. Museum and the National Museum of Caribbean Heritage. National Caribbean Heritage Museum, but still, all sorts of people with all sorts of love and kindness, willingness to help someone out to make her vision a reality. And of course, even the people at Exploding Kittens who helped us bring in this last bit so that we can say no, we will not be depressed. No, we will not be downtrodden. No, we will not be oppressed. No, we will not turn against our friends and neighbours. No, we will have a world that cares about people. Because you see, at the crossroads of liberty, morality and diversity, there is community. Built on each individual person coming together by hand and by brain to make the world a better place. So there, no to your hurtful ways. Let's do this. One final verse, everyone. Let's all get ready. In the beauty of the people, we have built community through the glory of our hand and brain. We enliven you and me as we come and bring our talents. We will make the world more free as community marches on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, hallelujah. Our community sorted out the politics, and we got through history back to the present day. Yeah, but there is one thing left. Of course, got to address that question: how we got from rocks to robots. Well, guess it's time we address the elephant in the room. Cause you want to stand forever, you gotta put things together. Things together, working out forever. Taking Marx's, like the economics, putting it together with the nations of people, for people to fix. We've then got to look at all the big ideas and all them leaders who give us the cheer, leading boos and cheers. All the little guys got to work it all out. And environmental factors ain't no doubt, but you got to get them all together, put them together, fix them up like a load of bricks, and that's how you build history. Take all the bricks, put them together. That's no mystery. With the bricks together, all the facts you take, and that is how we a history make.
us free. All they want, a bliss of solace, a place to let us be. Made of visions now be cast aside, we're less different than it seems. As through it all we're people, with joys and cares and dreams. As we trudge through days of strife, keep our hearts towards the sun. May compassion shine on forward for us all and everyone. And there's another country they founded long ago, built of works of love around us in the love we show. We're not counted as an army, but we are one family, a shoulder for us to cry on and to share the joys we see. Everyone a blessed monarch, where the least of us is best, as we welcome all who labour, where in thy peace grant rest.
Thank you for sticking around till the end credits scene. After all, got to have an end credits scene in a movie, haven't we? I mean, as far as I know, there isn't a Rocks to Robots expanded universe yet. But still, the most important point is everyone who helped out in this video, all the people over the years who've supported Ed in her work, and all the people who've given their time, energy and support to make this possible, and to everyone watching, it is lovely having you here.